Are you a prisoner to perfectionism and all the clutter that it creates? Do you find yourself getting stuck in black and white thinking, avoiding doing things because you want it to be perfect, or that you just have these standards that are so high you can never seem to reach them? Today I want to talk to you about perfectionism, how it creates clutter in your life, and how intergenerational trauma actually fits in the mix. And of course, as always, I want to provide you with strategies so that you can shift away from those ways of being that keep you trapped in your clutter, trapped in your mind, and prevent you from just living in balance and harmony and your soul purpose. So let's look at perfectionism. I'm not going to retake. Let's look at perfectionism when it is actually a great quality. Because perfectionism, when it's helpful, actually means you have high standards, which is good. It's inspirational, it's motivational, it really allows you to do a good job at something. It's an issue when you're a prisoner to it. When it stops you from doing things because you're procrastinating, because you want it to be perfect, and then you're thinking how you're gonna do it, or you end up spending a significant amount of time and money on one small aspect of a project or your life because it needs to be perfect, and then everything else in your life just goes to the wayside. If we allow that need for perfectionism to be there, and if it's not, then we don't do something, or we spend excessive amounts of time obsessing, then we end up creating a lot of clutter in our life. I didn't sleep so good last night. My lighting is not great because it's a horrible rainy day outside. However, I committed to doing these videos once a week. You're not going to notice if the lighting's off, and if you do, oh well, hopefully you're not coming for the videos. And for me, it's more about the content. So I have to be able to let go of what doesn't matter, which is the tiny little details, and look at the bigger picture. Because that's what gets lost when people get trapped in perfectionism, is missing the big picture and getting stuck in the small details. So let's talk about why that happens. In this month's blog, I talked about emotional and relational effects of trauma. And what ends up happening is that often we try to be small because we don't want to have that criticism that we had when we were growing up. Well, then what ends up happening, and I've seen it so many times over the 9 years working with clients, is that people have different forms of perfectionism. It could be around their appearance, it could be around how they do a particular task, it could be how they articulate themselves, even how they write an email. I've seen it all. And, it's tricky because you want to have those high standards, but where do you draw the line? Well, some flags to help you notice that are, is it shame? Is shame coming up when you want to have that perfectionism? Is it that you're trying to hide and stay small because you don't want anyone to say anything to you? So you're either procrastinating or going to extremes to complete something, and then you're redoing it and redoing it and redoing it before it's perfect, before you can show the world, because then you won't get that criticism. So there's that deep fear of criticism. The thing is though, if you don't address that cycle, it just keeps on happening. And it paralyzes you from just tuning in, seeing the big picture, and focusing on what matters the most, as opposed to those tiny details that people probably won't even notice. There are lots of things in this video, background, and whatnot, that I'm like, oh, I hope people don't notice this, that, and the other. You're not gonna know unless I tell you, so I'm not gonna tell you. I'd like for you to think about and take a pause. You can pause the video after I ask these questions, and I'm just going to read them off because I don't remember them. And I'm going to get you to just kind of reflect and start getting some awareness around, is your perfectionism causing you to be trapped in a prison and creating so much life clutter for you, and just like mind clutter and thoughts racing your head? So the first one is, does your perfectionism cause imbalance in your life? Are you trying to spend most of your time to be trying to be perfect, and then other things end up piling up? And then do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? And what does that actually look and sound like? Like, what are you telling yourself? What does it look like in your actions and in your behaviors? And are you so focused on the details that you're not seeing the big picture and what really matters and what your overall intention was to begin with, whatever you're putting your energy into being perfect? And then how often do you redo things until they're perfect? And I keep on doing this air quote because what is perfect? What is perfect for you? Is it to not be criticized? Does it mean that there's no other option and that's it? It's definitive? Because then that's where the black and white thinking comes in. And the reality is, this is exhausting to live a life like this. It means that you're never good enough. It means that you're always striving at a standard that you can't reach. And it keeps you in this state of fear. And we've talked about that in F-type videos, where you're in flight or fight or possibly freeze or fawn mode. And living in that mode all the time prevents you from being in alignment and prevents you from living in flow and rhythm. And then life just gets to be too much and too heavy. And then there's just too much clutter everywhere you look. So now what? Well, I want to offer a few suggestions today. And one of them is starting with your self-talk. Really taking some time to look at, what are you telling yourself? Is it true? And can you change the narrative? Can you change what you're telling yourself? Can you change your viewpoint? Because a lot of the time, the viewpoint that we have creates the reality that we have. I'm going to say that again. Our point of view creates our reality. And so maybe it's your point of view that could shift, that will help alleviate some of that need for extreme perfectionism. And then that just shifts everything. So whether you do this in a journal, through a conversation with a coach or therapist or friend, spend some time ongoing, not a one-time thing. Make it a daily practice to be, what am I telling myself, especially when I'm aiming for that extreme perfectionism that keeps me trapped in a prison? The second suggestion, which is a huge aspect of the work that I do with people, is what can you let go of? Because it's not just about the physical clutter. How can you let go and make space for possibility? Because when we hold on and we have all these criterias and all these things that have to be in these checklists and way of doing things, we hold on to that, it prevents us from being creative and creating space. Because if there's literally no space in our physical body, in our physical space, in our mind, nothing else is going to get in. And then that just smothers the whole creative process. So see what you can let go. Again, get into a daily practice. If you find yourself getting into that perfectionism mode, ask yourself, okay, what aspect of this can I let go of to give more space so I have more time? Maybe a different point of view comes in, maybe a different solution, a different idea, and then things get moving so that you're not stuck and trapped in that perfectionism. The last one I want to suggest is being flexible. If we stay rigid, and that is a huge sign of an after effect of trauma, is being rigid. That's a sense of control to create safety. If we're so rigid and we're not flexible and we don't have some openness, then it really hinders the creative process. And then it takes away the magic of possibility. So what I want you to do is make a list of all the times that you just kind of went with the flow. You had an intention, there was some structure, maybe none, and all these magical things happened when you just let go and allowed things to be without trying to force and make things be a certain way or perfect. So I hope this was helpful and gave you some insight on when perfectionism is actually great and when it causes you harm and clutter in your life and keeps you trapped in fear, and ways that you can be released from that prison of perfectionism and move more into alignment with your soul purpose, your creativity, your natural rhythm, and your flow. So if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. I'm doing them weekly. And Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and feel free, I'd love to hear feedback in the comment section if you found this helpful. Thank you.